as we get ready to worship.
Good morning. Hello, Anthem. Welcome. Good to see you. Welcome to our Anthem community, obviously. Welcome to our guests, those who are visiting us for the first time. It is really awesome that you can join us. If you're here because you're looking for a church, you're here because you have been following Kiara's story, if you're here visiting just to be with us at this time, and you're here because of the VPs that are with us, welcome to Mark and Candace VP from Life Changers Church. And if you are here online, we've had a lot of people joining us online over the last couple of weeks, and we want to say thanks for joining us, and we want to say that true healing and hope is found in a community like this. So all of us in this room would like to encourage you, wherever you may be, to find a life-giving church who can point you to Jesus and help you live everything that God has intended for your life, as we found in this place. So, welcome. Who saw the photos of the MG family's Christmas yesterday? Okay, so if you didn't, go have a look online. You won't see any more beautiful photos in this world. The MGs had planned a special family Christmas this past year. And as I looked at those photos, I just realized that they could not have planned anything as special as what happened yesterday. And this scripture came to mind, Zechariah 9 verse 12. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. And if you're in this place, wherever you might be in the world, even watching, but you're in this room this morning, I want to say that God can announce in a word, He will restore twice as much. And we have hope. And how many times have we sung the song, We'll Raise a Banner in the Streets of the City, singing that Jesus is alive? Kiara and her story is a sign and a wonder to our city, and we get to be a part of that story, that Jesus is alive, that there is a God who is powerful, who is faithful, who is good, and who is able to restore all brokenness. And so that is our hope. And last week, as we worshiped together, you know that our band used in-ear monitors. It means things that go inside their ears. They couldn't hear themselves, even though their in-ear monitors were raging inside their ears. That's how loud we worship. That's how much noise we make. And as we worship this God together this morning, proclaim that He is alive. Proclaim to ourselves, the people next to us, and to the world out there, that Jesus is alive. We'll see miracles continue to happen. Let's worship Him.
To our heart.
posted it on our website this week, on our Facebook page. It is called Good Grace, and it speaks about the good grace of God. And it's so anthemic, just lifting up the name of Jesus. So if you can listen to it, sing along. It's actually still quite easy to learn though. So let's go for it. People come together, strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. Children of generations, of every nation, kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, By the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into mine. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to bear my sin and bear my shame. The cross is broken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. In the morning that sealed the promise, your very body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus, yours is the His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb.
not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God, the salvation of all who believe. We've just been singing the gospel. Singing the gospel. Thank you for your power that is resident in this place. Thank you for your power that is available in our lives, for our lives, today, here, now. In every story represented, every story that we're connected to, we can have hope for your power and your glory to be revealed in that story, Lord Jesus, because of your mighty gospel. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. We can say amen. 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 If we ever gave marks for worshiping, I think we'd do pretty well. I don't know about. Thank you, may be seated. Before we go anywhere else, Rich, let's get that. Let's do this. Rich has something cool to share with us.
So we're always full of surprises when we get to worship together, and we've got a little video to show you. It's literally 7 seconds long, so you've got to pay attention from the very beginning. Is that okay? But someone would just like to say hello to you.
Hi everyone, missing you, love you, doing well, bye.
That was awesome. Sheesh. That is awesome. Whew, again, welcome. If you, Norman from The Rock last week said if you don't know about the story of Kiara, then you'd be living under a rock. He leads a church called The Rock, so I don't know, maybe you're from The Rock, I don't know if that's that. But maybe you've just come here this weekend. You don't know what you've come to. You've come to church. You've come to the church, and this is an expression of the church of Jesus Christ, people that love Him and have been just rescued by Him and been loved by Him. And just welcome. It's so good to have you. And thank you for joining us. There's so many other places around, especially around Durban, that you could be right now, but you've chosen to be with us. And thank you. We'd love to connect with you. We'd love to meet you. Come grab a coffee after the service. We'd really love to get to know your name and hope you come back. We are going to do something that we forgot to do last week, and that's take up our tithes and offerings. So this is a moment where we give in obedience to God, we give in faith to God, and we give because we trust that He is good. And our giving resources the proclamation of the truth about this God. The truths that we've been singing about Him, the truths that are being seen, the banner that has been raised, that Jesus is alive. Our giving today, it resources that proclamation of that truth. So thank you for being a generous community. Thank you for your continuous obedience and faithful giving. And let's continue to resource this proclamation of this amazing gospel that releases the power of God to redeem people's lives. Incredible. Amazing. And if you are here for the first time, or maybe you've recently joined us, and you would love to connect in to the Anthem story, you would love to be a part of us as Anthem, we have a thing called Growth Track, which is a 4-step process, a 4-week process that just allows you and helps you to connect into the story. So if you would like to become a partner in Anthem as we continue to proclaim the truth of this great gospel, we've got something for you. It's called Growth Track, and it's going to resume next Sunday, the 20th of Jan. And it's 4 weeks in a row. And step 1, the first week, is about belonging in a family. Step 2 is become a better follower of Jesus. Step 3 is benefit the world around you. And step 4 is build with your God-given gifts. And so they take place on a Sunday from 10:45 to 11:45 here on the Anthem property. So basically for 4 weeks in a row, you just stay behind after the morning service, and really it'll help you to connect. And so we invite you to join us for Growth Track. It's seems like 10 years has happened in a space of a month. But I don't know if you remember Anthem. In November, we announced Fight the Plight. The Domino Foundation is our mercy ministry. We've got 12,000 beneficiaries, 12,000 people that we serve and we resource and we help live their lives in a greater fullness. And we put a kind of campaign out there, Fight the Plight. Let's all give 500 Rand each, and let's see if we can hit the target of R1 million to meet the needs of our 12,000 beneficiaries. Bear in mind, we had sowing September. We had a record-breaking figure of us sowing into the future visions. And between November and December, we have raised 837,500 Rand. Merry Christmas. And that's because we took ownership. That's because obviously there were some businesses that gave some big amounts. But that's because we used our networks, we used our influence to bring people into the story. So well done, Anthony. Well done. Yeah. Amazing. Awesome. Amazing. As most of us would know, we had planned to have our Anthem Summit, which is our Vision Weekend, the first weekend of Feb. That has been postponed until further notice because we are wanting to give Rich and Jax, as our visionary couple, just some space, obviously, as they walk with Kiara on her journey to full recovery. But we want to give them space, and it's a bit pointless to have a visionary weekend without your vision here. So we're going to give them space. We're going to let that lay low. If you have registered, if you have paid for registration, you can email info@anthem.org.za. June, you can phone into the office. We can refund you, or you can just retain your registration until that further date. On the 10th of Feb, we had announced that we would be moving to 2 morning meetings. If you look around, the need is still there. The need is there more now than it ever was. But we're going to just hold on to that. We won't be moving to 2 morning meetings as yet. But as we can see, we do need to press forward because it's becoming more and more of a need. But this announcement is saying we are not moving to 2 morning meetings on the 10th of February at this stage. Is that cool? All right. Now we have a treat. We have Mark and Candice from Pletsen with us from Life Changes Church. I've seen Mark. I've seen him as a visionary. I've seen him come into a long-standing youth camp, kind of annual youth camp scenario, and it's been done this way, and it's been done at this venue, and this is how we do it. These are the churches involved, and it's a Durban, Maritzburg thing. And he comes in his first year of leading it. I don't think he'd ever attended. He says, all right, we're going to move this thing to the Berg, and we're going to draw Joburg, and we're going to get these people involved in this. And everyone's like, oh, we've never done it like this before. And he's like, big. He's a big man. He's got space in his heart. He sees it. He serves a big God, and he sees through the lenses of a big God. And so I've seen this man as a visionary. I've seen him lead worship, lead thousands of people in worship. The anointing of God upon him for that. I've seen him preach powerfully, even in this church many times. I've seen him minister to people. And on Christmas Day, I saw him as a very, very dear friend. As he dropped everything, as Cans, you released him to come. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And be next to his mate. In the hospital on Christmas Day, as he got on a plane from Cape Town. And he stayed with us for a few days with Rich and Jax. And he was good for them, and I want to say he was good for me. And the value he added, Cans, to not just Rich and Jax and the family, but to us, from a church leadership point of view, was invaluable. So we can trust him, we can lay our hearts bare, and we can have high expectations for God to do something miraculous in our hearts this morning. Can we welcome Mark?
Such a privilege to be here. We absolutely love this church. And I'm a preacher guy, I'm many things, but I'm actually a worshiper. And I feel like when you look at God's word, whenever God did amazing things, his people built altars. Wherever they went, they built these altars. Abraham engaged and had fear in his heart because of the Canaanites and the land God instructed him to take. And he built an altar of praise at that time. And I feel like we can build an altar right now of praise to God, who is good and He is kind, He is faithful and He is mighty. And I feel like there's a responsibility on us right now even to do that. Maybe just where you are, maybe join with me, maybe sit however you want to build an altar. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood, Jesus' blood, Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood, Jesus' blood. We keep our eyes closed for a second. I'm going to ask a question now, and I'm going to ask the same question at the end. Have you seen Jesus? Have you seen Him? Have you seen Him in His majesty and His splendor? Have you seen the rose of Sharon? And have you seen the lily of the valley? Have you seen Him in His glory and His wonder? See, it's an amazing thing. The Apostle John spent 3 years walking with Jesus. He spent years ministering with Him. He spent years encountering him. He was one of the three. He was the one who put his head on his chest. He was the one Jesus entrusted the care of his mother to. He was loved by Jesus. And then in the final book of Revelation, in the final moment of encounter, John is walking and he has a vision and he encounters Jesus, the glorious one, the risen Jesus. Yes, his friend. Yes, the one he'd walked with. Yes, the one he'd seen do miracles. Yes, the one he'd touched, the one he'd eaten meals with, the one he'd been around for time and time. But for the first moment, he sees Jesus in his splendor and his glory and his majesty, and he is overwhelmed, and it says he falls down as though dead because he saw Jesus. Have you seen Jesus? I feel like I've walked with Jesus for many years. I feel like I talked to him and he spoke, and I feel like I felt his touch. But then he does things and I see him again. I'm overwhelmed by him again. And everything I thought I knew, he pours out his love and his grace and reveals his wonder again. Maybe you've walked with him for many years. When God does miracles in our midst and we build altars of praise to him, there comes a responsibility to cry out with a greater revelation and knowledge of God, for the more of everything he has. Have you seen Jesus? We praise you, Jesus. We don't want to make this moment more somber than it needs to be, more whatever. This is a celebration. But I pray, God, over every person here today, they would see you, God. I pray for myself that I would see you, God. The way John saw you in that vision, in that moment. The King of glory. Fire in his eyes. We worship you, King. We worship you, God. Praise you, God. Praise you, King. Okay. This is not going to be a normal Sunday. And it's such a privilege to be here with you. It is such an amazing privilege. I love this church. I love the people of this church. I love the leaders of this church. And I feel incredibly honored to share this special moment with you. It has been a big couple of weeks. And we've got to take stock at times. We've got to sit back. We've got to breathe. We've got to see God, see Jesus, be overwhelmed again. We have to allow him to reveal himself to us. Otherwise, we just move on. And in Feb and March, we're at another deadline, another moment. And everything that God wants to do in your heart and my heart and in this community and in this city and in the nations of the world because of what is happening, he wants all the glory. He will get all the glory. He always was going to get all the glory. He always will get all the glory. And he will have all the glory. But there's some moments that I think we need to take and just honor and people who've led us and shown us things. Now, this is my friend. And I want to speak to Kiara first, who's watching this morning, and say that we are so proud of you. And you are unbelievably beautiful. And you bring God glory every second. And your story will change the world. And it's a privilege to be here this morning. Hebrews says, remember your leaders and who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. And I really didn't like that scripture a whole lot back in the early days of leadership. It means they've got to consider, which means they're watching. Like everyone's watching. They're watching in the traffic. And you've got a specific car that has a boat on it the whole time, so it becomes something people know that's you. And they're considering your outcome of your life. They're considering your parenting, and your neighbors get to consider. And they get to wonder, and then they got called to imitate the faith. And we've got to watch some leaders at this time, and we've got to consider and imitate. And I want to tell you, you've been privileged by the leadership you've received at this time. And don't take it for granted. We've considered, and we can imitate. And we do thank you for that. And at the toughest time, you've held on to Jesus. And in the toughest moments, you've opened up your hearts to allow others to speak. And in the toughest, biggest moments of your life, you've never stopped trusting Jesus. And we honor you, and to Jax, probably one of the greatest theologians that's influenced my life is in this room. Her name is Joylinette from Pletsen. Not many people have heard her preach sermons. I have a few. But probably one of the greatest theologians in my life, through ups and downs in their life, I've watched Jesus revealed. And Jax, I want to tell you, you are spectacular. That you have loved us, and you have led us, and you've led your family. And God is doing an amazing, amazing thing. And raising up mighty warriors. And He will use circumstances like this and situations like this to change the world. And we don't navigate the steps. And maybe you're struggling with some of the why and the how, and we'll talk through some of that today. But don't struggle with that stuff, because behind the scenes there is a God who's in control of every detail, and there's a God who doesn't make mistakes, and there's a God who will get His glory. He will. And it's an amazing thing. The Mangava name is a name in the city. I sat in a school where the name was on quite a few boards, actually. Not the boards I was on. I was on different boards, like attention and watch out for this kid and some of that stuff. But the Mangava name is on a lot of boards, and the Mangava name has been on a lot of boards in the city. The Mangava name has been known for influential business people and outstanding men and women of character and standing. And the Mangava name is carried and always proclaimed and worshipped the name of Jesus. But maybe, just maybe, the Mangava name will now be known about a miracle God did. That only God could do in a 13-year-old life. That only the King of glory, only the one who can resurrect the dead, can get glory. And I thank you, God. And I say, use it for your glory. Use it for the glory. And to Anthem Church in this moment, I just, as your friends, let's hear from Doha and Anae, and amazing to have you with us this morning. And I think there's some other guys around as well, pastors from the city. As your friends and as those cheering on, we just want to say, wow, you have love. And the Bible tells us, Jesus speaks, says, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, that they have love for one another. That they will know. They won't be second guessing, they will know. And by people praying all night, and by people giving generously and loving generously and calling and reaching out and trusting God in the middle of the night for miracles over inconvenient times, that's how they will know that we are His disciples. And I want to say well done. As your friend and as someone who prays for this church often, well done. We use a statement, doing life together. Have you heard that statement? Christians, we use it a lot. We're just doing life together. And everyone around is like, don't know what that means. We're Christians. And I've had to come up with a better statement for it, but maybe won't use it as much. But I think doing life together, Romans 12 says it this way in verse 15, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. I think that's what doing life together is. And I had a terrible statistic the other day. It's a statistic of the most unreached people group in America, the USA, for the gospel. And I had a whole bunch of ideas who I thought that was. You know who it is? It's people in wheelchairs. And it's bothered me. Because I don't think the gospel doesn't work for people stuck in wheelchairs through accidents or whatever situation. I don't think the gospel doesn't work. And I don't think the facilities aren't available. I think it's because sometimes of the church, and sometimes because our theology doesn't allow us to be as good at weeping as we are as rejoicing. And sometimes our theology doesn't allow us to go the long-term journey that sometimes weeping is a longer-term journey. And God wants to get deep down inside of us that if we are going to do life together, and if we are going to be His disciples, and if we are going to reach every person for His glory, He will teach us what it is to weep with those who are weeping, and He will teach us how to rejoice with those who rejoice. And sometimes it's going to happen all at the same time. We had a tragedy once at church on Saturday night. A man who got radically saved, and a great story I won't get to tell you now. He passed away on Saturday night, and I spent my Saturday night praying for him to be raised from the dead and then meeting his family. And a radical evening. And the next morning, we did 20 minutes of honoring that life and 20 minutes dedicating 20 little babies to Jesus. Because God says we can weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. And when we can do that well, we will be His church. We will be His disciples. We will give Him glory. Anyway, I really need to get to what I'm preaching about today. Some of you are already worried. Some of you are my friends. You've been around a while. You know this is concerning. But it's good. I've got some old rugby friends here. I've got some old Durban friends, which is amazing. I want to speak about when God breaks in. When God breaks in. Like He's broken in. And during church on Christmas Eve, I got a message from Rich that shook me because I left the service to go and listen to it, and it shook me, but God, things were good. And then I got another message when I was preaching on Christmas morning, and by then I'd already booked the last seat on the plane on Mango to get up to Durban, and things had changed, and things weren't good. And then I'm on the plane, and I'm one of those naughty guys, confession, my phone goes on earlier than it should. You know, as the plane's going down, I'm one of those guys. If you're the other guys, that's okay. And I want to know what was going on. And everything inside of me, I spent the whole time on the plane praying. I had my sunglasses on, I'm trusting God and holding on to God. And on the other side of, as we're going down, a message comes through from Richard, and it's a WhatsApp. And it said, we're losing her. That God is doing a Hail Mary scan. And I'm on the plane, and the plane hasn't landed yet. And I'm weeping like a baby. People around me think something's going on. And I just don't feel like explaining to a single person. I don't feel like I need to. They're really worried about me right now. It wasn't the Kalula for Mango flight. But as that was all going down, I had one image in my head. And see, I've got a little 8-year-old boy. He's had some challenges already. He's faced up to some mountains. He's fought some lions. He's winning some battles, and he's struggling to win some battles. But he's fighting some battles. And the other day, about a month ago, I came home, and the other kids were out, and he was in the TV room, and I just hear this little 8-year-old boy who's fought some battles, and he's singing. Because he's either singing or humming all day. That's his every day. He doesn't stop. And he's in this room by himself, and he's singing, "This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle." And I'm reminded there's only one way we get to fight our battle. We call on the name of the God who breaks it. The God who's never been silent. The whole gospel is about a king who never stayed away. The gospel is about a Father who sent a Son who came into the brokenness of our world and the brokenness of our sin and our shame so that He could be close to us, that He could have His sons and daughters home, and made a way where we could make no way. We keep calling on His name at this time, and here we are, a miracle has happened. We build altars of praise to Him, and God's saying, who would be the people? Because a lot of people are excited, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are reading posts and blogging and putting things out there and celebrating the miracle that God has done. But in 2 weeks, 6 months, in 10 years' time, will we still be praising and holding on? You see, there was a season and a period, and at the start of the Bible, if you've ever started a reading plan like me, which is, I've started many, more than the years that I've lived, and you go to these books, and you start at Luke chapter 1 or Mark chapter 1, and Luke chapter 1, there's this account that starts with Zechariah and Elizabeth. These people who were priests in they were priests, and they were in God's people, and they were part of the priesthood who would go in and they would worship God, and for 400 years, God had been silent. For 400 years, there had been no word, there had been no prophecy, there had been no encounter. 400 years, and then this remnant of people in years of silence, waiting for God to break, knowing that God is who He says He was, continuing to worship. These guys were praising, these guys were worshiping, these guys were in the temple pursuing God for 400 years. They were the remnant, the faithful few, pursuing and calling on the name of God, who never stopped. And I walked in that hospital at all times of the night, and there's the Olivier family and the Naaman family and some families from this church crying out to God. And young girls who I remember when they were born as grace gifts to their parents, and now women of God with faith crying out to the King. God says, I want you to call. You see, in the old days, God used to speak directly to Abraham and Isaac, who would love some of the ways God spoke to his people. And when God spoke to Abraham, he said, this is the Lord, go from your country, your people, and your father's household, and the land I will show you. God spoke to Isaac in the same way. He said, I don't want you to stay, I want you to move. As a father in that moment, all you want is one word from God. You just want one word from God. And you'll hold on, you'll cry out, you'll keep calling. And then what happened is God began to speak to some of their relatives and Joseph and the many others, and they would speak to the people, but the people lost their focus. The people lost faith. The people started wondering. And then God said there's going to be a famine, and it's not a famine of food, it's not a famine of water, it's a famine of the voice of God. And I want to speak about a situation where it all changed, where God breaks in, and He breaks into the remnant. Because our God is no longer silent. But our God is speaking, our God is doing glorious things. But at times like this, everything changes. I want to tell you at the church that at times like this, God has done a miracle in your midst that comes with a responsibility. And this is the responsibility that in 5 years' time, you're not still telling the story of Kiara. There are tens and hundreds of other stories of God restoring broken bodies, God restoring broken lives, God calling you to more, to reaching up. It comes with a responsibility. And I want to read a little bit from Luke chapter 1 and make 3 points. Simple this morning. I know Richard has 17 points normally. Somebody like, it's hard to follow. And, don't touch our pastor. Relax. I'm behaving myself. This is very hard for me. You know that. Yes, thank you. Luke chapter 1. And I'm going to read some scriptures from that and then take 3 simple points. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah. See, this family was a lot like the Mangavin family. They were priests. They worshipped God's temple, they were faithful, and a whole bunch of stuff going on, but who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were upright in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and regulations blamelessly. But they had no children because Elizabeth was barren. See, that's slightly different with Mangavins, just slightly different. So, I know it's a big hurdle to get over, but it's okay. And they were both well along in years. Once when Zechariah's division was not on duty and he was serving as a priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the time for burning the incense came, all the assembled worshippers were praying outside. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and a delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. For he will be great in the sight of the Lord." Skip to verse 18. Zechariah asked the angel, "How can I be sure of this? I'm an old man, and my wife is well along in years." The angel said to him, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I've been sent to speak to you and tell you this good news. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering why he stayed so long in the temple. When he came out, he could not speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, for he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. It's like the worship guys, they do this. They make signs, but they can't speak. When his time of service was completed, he returned home after his wife Elizabeth became pregnant, and for 5 months remained in seclusion. "The Lord has done this for me," she said. "In these days he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people." Jesus, we worship you, we honor you, praise you. I pray, reveal your glory and your goodness to us this morning. I pray, would your grace be upon us this morning. I pray for those that are crying out for miracles in this place. I ask Jesus, move your hand, speak 2 words, be still this morning, and let love flow. We worship you, God. In quick context, again, this couple are faithful couple, they're servants, blameless and childless. Doesn't make sense. Maybe things like this happen, and people start to wrestle, well, why do bad things happen to good people? How does that go down? And people all get shut down. Oh, it's the pastor's kid. Where is God? And that can't be the response of the remnant. That can't be the response of God's church, of God's people who know Him, who know that He is faithful. Hold on. And this young couple should have been living the hashtag my best life on Facebook. Young Zechariah and Elizabeth, everything was laid out, but the problem was they couldn't have kids. In an age where kids was everything. Everything. Your future, your inheritance, your everything was laid up in your ability to have kids. And childless they would continue. And childless he would continue as a priest, and she was from a priest line, and he would go into the presence of God and proclaim and burn incense and worship God. I want to tell you 3 points from this story that stood out to me when I read it. Because it's a story about when God breaks in. Number one, God breaks in after 400 years of silence. God breaks in because he's going to be revealing Jesus. And God breaks into a specific couple. You've got to ask why. Like the first words Kiara speaks. You hold on to those. It's important. And God speaks words to this couple. And I want to tell you the first point. The God who breaks in is the God who secures my lot. See, it says this in verse 9. Once when Zechariah's division was on duty and he was serving as a priest before God, he was chosen by Lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. Drawing lots has been around for years. There's a number of scenarios in the Bible where they drew lots. As a child, I remember drawing lots. I remember a friend of mine, Duncan, drawing the short straw and having to stick his head in a bucket of whitewash at DPHS. He's okay. He's okay. I know you guys are worried and like we should be praying for Duncan. He's okay. I drew a short straw once. Another thing you're going to hear for the first time, Joy. And we were at my other friend Pletsen's house, and we drew straws to see who would jump off the roof. Because no one had done it. It was new territory. We were pioneering. And so I drew the short straw. And I jumped. And I landed. And I hit my own head on my own knees. To be out cold. And everyone was so afraid they ran away, and I woke up a few minutes later, but we were fine. Don't pray for me either, I'm fine. I've had concussion many times since then, so it's nothing that wouldn't be new. But God, it seems that through Bible time there was this belief, and they would use it as a common practice to draw lots because God would direct and God would show it. It was God's way of leading them. They believed in this moment. And I'm reading the scripture, and it's this amazing thing that God is silent for 400 years, and he speaks for the first time into a scenario. He breaks in by a man who drew a lot. I want to tell you, there were these divisions of priests who would go on. There would be 8,000 priests who would go in and offer incense. 8,000. Broken up into 24 divisions. They would go in 2 weeks of every year. And the only way to facilitate that was get all the priests and say, okay, come boys, I know you all want to be the guy that burns the incense, but God hasn't spoken to us, so we're going to draw lots, and let's draw lots. And they would come and they would draw lots, and guess who drew the lot to be in there that time, in that moment, in that? A guy named Zechariah. A guy who's been praying, a guy who's been asking, a guy who's been faithful even though their greatest desire of having children hasn't happened. That guy is in there. That guy, because he drew lots. And I want to tell you this morning a simple reality that our God is not a God of drawing the short straw. Maybe even you this morning, maybe you've heard that in your life. I drew the short straw. Maybe in your family you feel like you drew the short straw. Maybe circumstantially you feel like you drew the short straw. That the numbers didn't land the way they should have. You're sitting and you're processing an accident, and Richard's telling me about the accident. I'm going, God, is this just luck of the draw? Just 1 minute later, 1 minute earlier. Just maybe the other car, the bigger car. Is that where we go? Are we those people? Are we the people who know that behind it all and above it all there is a God who is greater than it all, a God who is jealous for His glory, a God who is in control and doesn't make mistakes? And the greatest theology I ever learned, again, was from my mother at a funeral. And I think I've told this story here before. Of a family who lost their 12-year-old daughter, the Sidaways. And Delena Sidaway stood up at her daughter's funeral. She got up and she started to speak, and she said, "This is all I know. My God doesn't make mistakes." See, 8,000 priests, one moment of God encountering 400 years, and God chooses Zechariah. See, I think too often Christians are living like we're drawing the short straw. It breeds insecurity, it brings challenge. I want to tell you what the King David, who in the midst of time of peril, reveals to us about the God who reigns above. He says this, Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You are everything I need, and you will always be everything I need. It says, you make my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. And there is so much there that if everyone in the church got it, the church would become a whole lot more secure, a whole lot more stronger, and we would see a whole lot more of what God is wanting to do in this world, because God makes a lot secure. It says He maintains a lot. He holds it with the strongest hand. He never lets go. Before the accident, Kahara's lot was secure. In the instant of that accident, Kiara's lot was secure. And in the moments following, in the weeks following, Kiara's lot has always been secure. Because the God who reigns and who holds her securely is on His throne. And I don't know where you sit in the paradigm of thinking about open doors and closed doors and a whole bunch of stuff. I want to tell you, as a God who makes your lot secure, and He speaks, and He keeps breaking it. He maintains a lot. Zechariah didn't just get lucky, and Kiara hasn't just got lucky. She was always in the hands of the God who made it lot secure. See, disciples of Jesus keep freaking out. In Mark chapter 4, we see the situation where the boat's rocking and the ships and the waves are crashing. And they forget this thing because they haven't been around Jesus enough, because they haven't been filled with Him enough, they haven't seen it enough, they need to see Him more. And they're crying out, and He just gets up, says He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. And I think sometimes we spend so much time crying out for a captain of a ship to come and steer the ship. When God says, I'm the command of the winds and the waves. Stop asking me to steer your ship. Ask me to drop the waves. Ask me to do what only I can do. Because I want to reveal my glory. The God who breaks sin is the God who secures our lot. Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. What do you know right now? I'll tell you what, I sat with a lot of parents the last 3 weeks who said to me these words, this was my greatest fear. Any parents here? It's your greatest fear. It's your greatest fear that something like this would happen to your child. Be still. The same word spoken to the winds and the waves, and the same word spoken to my heart, because the same storm can blow. Be still and know that I am God, and I will be exalted among the nations. And I will be exalted in the earth. I want to tell you that the God who breaks in is the same God who hears our prayers. And it says this in Luke chapter 1, then the angel of the Lord appeared to him standing on the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to give him the name John. 400 years, and God says nothing. Priest going in and out, drawing lots, going in and out, drawing lots, going in and out. And God breaks into a man, and the first thing God said to him, your prayers have been heard. Your prayers, we've got to know. See, the problem is, we don't all know how to fight our battles. And sometimes the church are the worst at fighting battles. And God's saying, I want the church to be the best at fighting battles. I want the church to grow up. I want the church to know who I am. I want the church to be those who will be still in the storm and call on my name as the commander. And I want the church to know that I've heard every word they've ever said to me. And every prayer you've ever prayed. And every cry you've ever cried before Him. And every prayer you prayed for your children who are wondering. And every prayer you prayed for your future that doesn't look possible. There is a God who hears your prayers. That secures us and settles us. But I just imagine Zechariah in this prison. He's all alone. He's in there. He's offering his incense. And he's lying down next to me and he hears this voice. You won't believe this, but I was quite a naughty kid. And I had an older sister. And she used to park her car just above the flats, above our house. And then she'd walk down Ridge Road next to this like bush and walk home in the day. And that was great. Until one day I thought, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go in the bush. You know? And what I'm going to do is she walks past, I'm just going to rattle the bush a little bit. And then, to her great delight, obviously, I'll jump out the bush. Yeah. And I did that. I thought it was a great plan. And I did that. And as I did that, she screamed. A scream you've never heard before. And she ran from the top where we were, about 200 meters to the top of St. Thomas Road. Then she ran all the way down St. Thomas Road screaming like an absolute wild person. I think Zechariah would have felt a little bit like that. Like there's no one else in here. Hello? I don't know. Is it just me? It's like, and then he says, do not be afraid. Why? Because the guy is pooping himself. Can you say that? We can say that in Cape Town. Can you say that in Durban? Speak to Richard afterwards. And, but Zechariah had a request, but I think over time, maybe his request will change. He says to him, but I'm old in years. I think they would have spent year after year after year crying out for kids. And God says, speaks to him through an angel, says, your prayers have been heard. See, that same hospital where we spent a few days and where Kiara is still. That same hospital where we were told we wouldn't have kids. That same hospital is where I was told my third kid would be a Down syndrome child. The same hospital. But there's a God who hears our prayers. And I go on a camp, and two young cogs, now anthem kids, say to me, can I pray for your wife? And they're weeping, and one of them is very ready. His name's Graham Phillips, and he cries ugly. It's very ugly. And like, that's an ugly cry, but you can pray for my wife. He prays for my wife. And we fall pregnant within a week of that. And I could do the medical stuff and explain why we couldn't fall pregnant, but it was a miracle. And even the doctor spoke that, and then another son, because God keeps doing miracles, because God always hears our prayers. And He doesn't just hear our prayers where we start crying. He's heard our prayers. He's heard every single word we've ever said. You think He never heard? He's heard. Every time we've cried out, sometimes in fear, sometimes in anxiety, sometimes not knowing what's going on, He's heard every single one. And Zechariah, in the presence of God, God says to him, I've heard your prayers. All those years, I've heard your prayers. Carries on. So the church and the world needs testimonies of people who will stand. We've got testimonies of people in our church who prayed for 14 years trusting God for kids. Fell pregnant. We've got testimonies of people a guy who got fired because of the gospel. 18 months, no job. And God has provided profound. God's going to do it again and again. We need these stories again and again. And Zechariah and Elizabeth are just another story of God breaking in. Do not be afraid, Zechariah. I have heard your prayers. Have you stopped praying? Have you stopped praying? I mean, you prayed for Kiara. Thank you. But have you prayed for yourself? Have you spoken to your Father? Or is the fast food world that we live in too much, and 2 prayers on the way to work and God didn't hear me, so are you able to trust Him? Are you able to hold on to Him? See, this year we started with a series called Move the Mountains at our church. And we were preaching about a God who moves the mountains in faith. Because in October last year, I married a girl whose wedding I'd done 2 years before, who passed away from lupus. I told you that earlier in the year. And behind the scenes, we're fighting for the health of my wife. Every day. The last time I was with you, she spent the morning in Richard's office because of pain. But if you navigate those journeys and you don't know, and I mean know, that God hears your prayers, every single word, you will live a confused, insecure Christian life that will lead to ineffectiveness, and we won't see the miracles that God wants to do again and again and again. And God is calling His church to know that our lot is secure in Jesus and that He hears our prayers. I'm just trying to give you truths. I'm trying to give you handles to fight your battles, because every single person in this room is fighting a battle. Every single one. And in every single one of them, God wants His glory. And He will get His glory. What does God say about Himself? I want to pop a picture. This is a couple in our church. They're leaders in our church. And for years and years, they've struggled for kids. And then this amazing lady over here came. You don't even know this maybe. And prophesied over them in February that Jen would be a mother to nations. And And I don't know what you knew or didn't know, but behind the scenes there are multiple miscarriages. There are multiple operations. There is pain. There's a whole bunch of things. That was in February. And last year, the boy on the left, he's the nephew of Wayne. And he needed to be fostered because his parents are struggling. And this year, through a whole process and a situation, he has become their child. His name's Leah. Then, God spoke to them and said, we feel like God has spoken to us to adopt, which they never wanted to do. And they processed and they got the phone call, you are eligible for adoption. Awesome. Said, there's a little man waiting for you. You don't get to see them, you just get to say yes or no. You don't get his name, you get nothing. And they said, okay, we're in. And what we're going to do, we're going to change his name when he comes. God's going to give us a name because he's going to be our boy. But then they meet this little dude. That little guy's the greatest delight to me every Sunday. He dresses in skinny jeans, fancy shoes, and shirts a lot like mine. We generally look alike. You know what his name is? Zachary. Zachary would come from Zechariah. You know what Zechariah means? Yahweh has remembered. The Lord has remembered. I want to get to the most insecure part in your soul today. But maybe God never heard your prayers. I want to get there. And I want to ask, would you allow that to open up and allow Jesus to get there? To secure you today in his love. That he hasn't missed a word. Not a tear. Not a second. And lastly, I want to tell you that the God who breaks in is a God of the impossible. And we worship a God who can move the mountains. And Zechariah knew this. He knew all the stories. He'd heard of God parting seas. He'd served God that brought water from rocks and led people through. But he questioned. He says, how can I be sure of this? He asked the angel. How can I be sure of this? I'm well on in years and my wife is barren. How can I be sure of this? And the angel speaks, says, I speak, I'm Gabriel, I stand in the presence of God, and I've sent you to speak. See what we need? We need men and women who've stood in the presence of God to speak the life of God into the impossible situations of this world. And from the presence of God, we speak life to dead bones. We speak life to the worst diagnoses in the world. We speak life because that is who our God is. Not false hope, not false declarations. From the presence of God, God's life begins to flow. God wants to continue to do that. My favorite words, but God. I listen for it in meetings when I'm sitting with people, and I'm sitting with people who've walked with the Lord for many times, and they're telling me how bad their marriage is, and they're telling me how bad their wife is. It's obviously not your husband, but and they're telling you how bad the diagnosis is, and then you know what words I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for these words, but God. Because they change everything. And I don't know why you're here this morning, and I don't know who came in. Maybe it's a Facebook post, maybe it's... But I want to tell you there are two words that will change your life forever. But God. You have cancer in this room this morning, but God. Your marriage is a mess, and there's no life, and there's hardly a heartbeat on but God. And we're standing in that room, and there's a little box. We don't know what all these boxes are. And there's a box behind Cora that said, that's the box of pressure in her head. And next begins to sing. And the number starts to come down. 30, 29, 28, 27. And people are praying. 26, 25, 24. And the thousands around the world of saints are presencing themselves in the presence of God. 23, 22, 21. And God wants to do that in your life too. And maybe it's been years. Maybe it's been years. If you would trust him, if you would hold him, and if you would allow himself to reveal himself, to see him for the first time, that he is the God of the impossible, we will see the impossible because God has put a mandate on this church. And God speaks to Jeremiah the prophet in Jeremiah 1, and he asks him 3 times, says, Jeremiah, what do you see? I want to tell you, God has done the miracle and is continuing to unfold the miracle, but he's asking Anthem Church right now, what do you see? What do you see? Do you see hundreds of people struggling with addiction coming to freedom and life because of the glory of the wonder of the King? Do you see thousands upon thousands fed, and Justin said, but do you see the thousands coming so because of salvation to Jesus? What do you see? So nice. We're going to tell the story. What we're going to do as a church, we're going to build a thing. And if anyone had this idea, I didn't know about it. We're going to put a thing on the wall. We're going to put a picture of Cora. And every Sunday, we're just going to thank God for the miracle He did. Please don't do that. And if you do it, write those words. Do it again. Because I stood next to a bed with my friend and we sang that song. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Do it again, God. God wants to do it again. He wants to do it again. And we aren't called to be the church on a block. We are called to be a city on a hill, shining brightly for His glory. God wants to put a fire inside of our bellies, and He will use situations like this to revive the church. The church needs revival. People aren't running to the church because we are too dangerous. They think we're too boring. Some of you are shocked. I know. They're looking at us and go, they gather on Sundays, they do Christian karaoke, and then they have good coffee and they go home. Come on, there is so much more this world is looking for. And we have a God who restores. We have a God who lifts. Talita kum. We have a God who speaks life, and thousands upon thousands are watching a story because they are looking for God. And they're looking for a people who can reveal Him. They're looking for saints who have been in His presence and can speak with confidence and courage. I have been in His presence. Let me tell you about the glory of God so they can see Him for the first time as we fall down on our faces before the wonder of the King. Because Jesus is glorious. Jesus is worthy of praise. Jesus is a healer. Jesus is majestic. Jesus is magnificent. And whether we are weeping today or we are rejoicing, because I've got no doubt there are some that are still weeping in this room right now through circumstances, situation. I want to tell you, Jesus is glorious. He is able. And He is the God who moves the mountains. But there's a waiting sometimes. Maybe you're in the waiting room right now. You're waiting for your miracle. It's a hard place to be. It's a hard place to navigate. I would ask you to do, they have done. Give yourself to community. Give yourself to prayer. Give yourself to the goodness of God. Trust Him. We live in a trust deficit world, and we engage God in a trust deficit way. And God's saying it's time for my church to trust me, the God who moves the mountains. God is here, and hope is alive. I love the fact that someone asked Jackie if she was the mother of hope. Hope is alive. And the God who breaks in is the God who makes our lot secure. Can you say that? The God makes my lot secure. Can I ask you to speak to your most insecure part right now? And can I ask you to say to that part of yourself, God makes my lot secure? Because the church have got to get more secure. In the wonder and the glory and the goodness of our God, we are going to see the miracles that He has for us and that He has for this world. And you know what? What's happening right now? Even somewhere up in the back rows and somewhere it's like, yes, do it with the church, God. God's going to add people to this church so He can use them to reach the world. He's saying, you were here. When we built that altar, you were here. I want to use you. I want to use your story. I want to use your brokenness. I want to use your thing so that I can get all my glory. The God who hears my prayers and the God of the impossible. You've got to know these things. You've got to believe when God says in His Word, God's will is good, perfect, and pleasing. It's not always going to be good, perfect, and pleasing to you, but it will always be good, perfect, and pleasing for you. I only learned that when I became a father. Now, I'm not saying God orchestrated an accident. Please don't hear what I'm saying. But I want to tell you that in every detail of every second, there was a God who was in control. Always in control. I want to pray for us this morning as we land. And just before that lady passed away last year, I sat with her mother, who was a great friend of mine and worked with us for a couple of years. She asked me a question that will haunt me maybe for most of my life. As a lady who was mourning her dying daughter, sat with me and she was looking me in the eyes. And in a moment of absolute honesty, she asked me a question. She said, can beauty come from pain? Can beauty come from pain? See, we can process that for someone else, but when it's your story, can beauty come from pain? When you trust Jesus, and when you trust God, God will paint the most beautiful pictures and stories. You will get all His glory. He's crying out to a church to trust Him. I want to just pray for us right now. I want to ask, are you struggling to trust God right now? God wants to settle those things. I'm telling you, church, we will remain in a small space. And our church buildings will be like caves that hold the church rather than release us into the world unless we get this thing that God is calling us to trust Him. That God is the God who breaks Him. That God is the God who secures my lot, regardless of circumstance, trial, situation. That God is above all. God hears every prayer and every cry, in every situation and in every moment. But He's calling us to be a people who will trust Him. So we talk about beauty from pain, and there was no greater pain than the cross of Jesus Christ. Have you seen Jesus? Not the church, not been around Him. Have you seen Jesus? Have you allowed the Spirit of God to reveal the glory of the one who reigns? Have you allowed Him to rescue you from your brokenness and shame and guilt? See, the whole world stopped amidst this year. And even the World Cup coverage stopped because of 12 kids caught underground in a cave. The whole world stopped because the world loves a rescue mission, but there's never been a rescue mission like Jesus. That cross. I'm going to tell you today, He died for you. And the first time I walked into Kiara's room, I looked at her head with the bandages around her head, and there was this big written plaster above her head, no bone. I can't get that image out of my head. Exposed, vulnerable, unprotected. Outside of a miracle, no hope. Is that you today? Maybe it is a physical bone, maybe it's your past, maybe it's circumstance, situation. I want to tell you, Jesus is enough. He says, take, eat. This is my body which was broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. His body was broken for you. His body was broken for Kiara. His body was broken for you. Will you receive His healing today? His wholeness. His everything. What's broken in you today? I want to tell you, you have no way out of the cave outside of Jesus. Kiara had no way forward outside of Jesus. I'm convinced of it. The same way I'm convinced that outside of Jesus, there's not a person in this world that has a way out of their brokenness, their guilt, and their shame, their vulnerability, their exposure, without Jesus, the one whose body was broken, beaten, and bruised for us. Have you seen Jesus? Not do you know of Him, not have you read a post about Him. Have you seen Jesus? Do you know that He makes your lot secure? Do you know that He hears your prayers? Do you know that He is the God of the miracle? Have you seen Jesus? I want to pray. If you are here this morning and you haven't made that decision, and you haven't seen Jesus, you're saying maybe you've been in church for years. But your language is never but God. I want to pray with you this morning that you would see Jesus in wonder and splendor, because once you have tasted and seen, there's no stopping. And God will do miracles again and again. Can I pray for you? If that's you this morning, say, I want to see Jesus. I want His grace and His mercy to touch my life. I want the fullness of everything He has for me. But I can't just do this plaster around my brokenness. I need the healing that only the King of Kings can provide. If you need that, can I pray for you this morning? Is anyone here this morning? Why don't you just allow the grace? Thank you. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you. Jesus, come. Reveal, Spirit of God, reveal the one. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood, Jesus' blood, Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood never fails me. Jesus' blood, Jesus' blood. If you need physical healing right now, can I ask you to stand? Right now, if you want physical healing, let me put it that way. Our God is a healer. This is not a sideshow of the church. This is not something God does to bring a bit of lights to the church. Our God is a healer. He's a healer. He can heal broken bones. He can heal. He brings order and He speaks 2 words. Be still to cancer. That's who He is. I'm going to ask you to reach your hands out to these people right now. Reach your hands. I don't know all these stories, but our God is a healer and He knows every detail and He's heard every prayer. And right now, King, in your presence, we stand amazed at you and we say, glorious King, glorious King, speak 2 words to whatever affliction, speak 2 words to whatever disease, speak 2 words, be still, be still, be still. Bodies that are out of line, be still. Blood that is out of line, be still. Cancer that is raging, be still. Depression that is ravaging, be still now. Because the King of glory is on His throne. Be still. Because He will have His glory. Thank you, Spirit of God, that you are here. Healing right now. And as you've done with Kiara, we say, God, do it again. Do it again. Do it again, God. Do it again. Can we praise Him? Can we thank Him for what He's done? Thank Him for what He will do. Thank Him for all that He is. We praise You, God.
Can we thank Mark and Ken? Served us so much. Mark and Candice will be with us tonight, and Mark will be preaching. I don't want to put any evil on the air. A different message. Yeah. All right. So it will be sorry. You're going to be preaching one of mine, which makes it one of his best. Let's see if I can live to that comment next week. All right, so do come back tonight, 5:15 p.m. As a community, we love to end every corporate moment in, what do you call this stuff again? Communion. Because we gather around the life of Jesus, and the life of Jesus was given to us and poured out for us on that cross, and like a wellspring of life, it burst forth into all eternity for us to enjoy. And it's this remembrance that we gather around. So let's come take communion together, pray for one another. Let those who are strong lift up the weak. and let's remember what He's done and the life that He's poured out for us. Is that cool? All right, have a great week. We'll be praying together again Wednesday morning, 6 till 7. You really should be joining us nowadays, let's be honest. All right, we'll see you then. Have a good week.